5 signs someone in your life is a witch. There are forces walking beside you that do not come in black robes or carry broomsticks. They don't chant under the moonlight or reveal themselves in dark rituals. No, many of them smile in your face, hug you tightly, and speak blessings with their lips, while their hearts are bound to darkness. The greatest deception of this generation is that witchcraft looks obvious. But the truth is, it has learned to disguise itself in friendship, mentorship, and even love. Some of the people draining your spirit are not just negative. They are spiritual agents sent to delay, distract, and destroy your purpose. Witches today don't always work in covens, they work through conversations. They cast spells not through potions, but through influence. Their power is not in their pot, but in their presence. And until you learn to discern the hidden energy behind the people connected to your life, you will keep fighting battles that were never yours to fight. In this message, we're going to expose the 5 undeniable signs that reveal when someone in your life is a witch, because you cannot defeat what you continue to entertain, and you cannot break free from what you refuse to identify. Witchcraft disguises itself as light. The most dangerous darkness is the one that wears the mask of light. The most poisonous people are not those who openly oppose you, but those who pretend to support you while secretly working against you. Witchcraft never comes wearing horns. It comes clothed in smiles, empathy, and understanding. It enters your life quietly, through charm, charisma, and what appears to be care. It comes as a friend, a helper, even a spiritual guide. But behind the mask of light is a heart that has made a covenant with darkness. That is why the ancient spiritual principle warns us that even the deceiver himself can appear as an angel of light, not because he wants to bless you, but because he needs your trust before he binds your destiny. Witchcraft is not always about spells, potions, or rituals. It is about influence, manipulating human will for selfish or dark intentions. The modern witch has evolved. She wears perfume, not potions, uses soft words, not chants, and connects through energy, not broomsticks. Her greatest power is deception, and her strongest disguise is kindness. You see, true manipulation never begins with attack, it begins with affection. The witch first learns how to mirror you. She studies your language, your dreams, your vulnerabilities, and your desires. Then she positions herself as what you've been praying for, a friend who understands your pain, a listener when no one else listens, a supporter when the world rejects you. But her compassion is counterfeit. It's bait for the spirit of control. Once you open your heart to her influence, she begins to weave her invisible web. You'll notice she always wants to know more about your emotions than your victories. She feeds off your pain. She is drawn to your weakness because that is where she can plant her seeds. She is never at peace when you are strong and always available when you are broken. That is because witchcraft is parasitic. It cannot create energy, so it drains energy. And it drains through connection. Every witch operates through access. They cannot curse what they cannot reach, and they cannot reach what is spiritually guarded. That is why they come clothed in light, to gain entry where darkness would be denied. When a witch enters your life, she does not immediately reveal her nature. She will affirm you, celebrate you, and compliment you. She will present herself as someone who feels your energy, or understands your spirit. Be careful of those who seem to know you too deeply, too quickly. Authentic relationships are built through time, not telepathy. But witches bypass the natural process of trust. They accelerate intimacy because they are on assignment. They cannot afford patience, for their time in your life is strategic. Their goal is to occupy your space of influence before light exposes them. That is why discernment is not optional. It's spiritual survival. You cannot always detect witchcraft with your eyes, but your spirit will always feel it. Something about them won't sit right in your soul. They will seem perfect on paper, but heavy in your presence. You'll feel drained after conversations, confused after meetings, anxious after encounters. You'll try to explain it logically, but your spirit already knows. It's not their personality, it's their power. They have entered your atmosphere and your peace begins to decline. That's not normal conflict, that's spiritual collision. The witch uses words carefully. She does not speak like an enemy, she whispers like an ally, but her words carry weight. They linger in your mind long after she's gone. They make you question yourself, doubt your intuition, and misinterpret your purpose. She'll disguise control as concern, jealousy as protection, and manipulation as advice. Her goal is not to guide you, but to govern you. You'll notice how your choices begin to reflect her voice more than your own. That's when you must awaken, because no one who truly loves you will need to possess you to support you. The greatest tragedy is that most people never realize they're under the influence of witchcraft because they confuse light with love. But not everything that feels good is good for you. Some relationships are energy traps. Some friendships are spiritual contracts. You cannot hold on to light while dining with darkness. The moment you discern that something or someone brings confusion instead of clarity, heaviness instead of peace, distance from your faith instead of closeness, you must separate. Spiritual boundaries are not cruelty, they are protection. And remember, witches fear exposure more than rejection. The moment you begin to walk in truth, they grow uncomfortable. The more you pray, the more they retreat. The stronger your light, the weaker their influence. That's why awareness is your first weapon. You cannot cast out what you continue to call a phase. You must name it to tame it. You must confront it to conquer it. Every person who carries witchcraft in disguise depends on your ignorance for their survival. The moment you see them for what they are, their power breaks. So don't be deceived by appearance. Evil doesn't always wear darkness. It often wears light. The people who smile at you may not all be for you. Learn to discern the difference between energy that heals and energy that hides. One draws you closer to peace, the other pulls you away from it. One strengthens your purpose, the other suffocates it. Witchcraft is not about appearance, it's about atmosphere. When someone enters your space and your peace begins to die, that's not coincidence, that's contamination. It's time to awaken your discernment. Because in this world, not everyone who holds your hand wishes you well. Some hands are warm but wicked. Some smiles are soft but sinister. The light they carry is artificial. It shines only to blind you, not to guide you. True light brings freedom, not confusion. True light exposes darkness. It doesn't coexist with it. So guard your spirit, protect your peace, and remember, when witchcraft comes disguised as light, only those anchored in truth can see beyond the glow. They thrive on emotional access. Witchcraft gains its power not through force, but through feelings. It doesn't need to chain your body, it only needs to touch your emotions. The easiest way for a witch to manipulate your destiny is to first manipulate your heart. That's why the spirit of witchcraft always looks for an open door, and that door is emotional access. They study you, listen to you, comfort you, and slowly begin to weave themselves into the fabric of your emotions. Once they have your trust, they begin to pull invisible strings, subtle shifts that make you question your peace, your direction, and even your faith. The witch's greatest power is not in her hands, but in her ability to control how you feel. Because whoever controls your emotions controls your energy, and whoever controls your energy controls your life. You'll notice how such people seem magnetically drawn to your pain. They appear at the perfect time, when you're hurting, broken, or desperate for connection. They are emotional opportunists. They thrive where there is vulnerability because vulnerability gives them entry. They don't attack your strength, they comfort your weakness. They learn your language of pain, they mirror your emotions, and they present themselves as your healer. But their comfort is not healing, it's harvesting. Every tear you share becomes a key to your heart. Every secret you confess becomes a seed of control. You think you've found someone who understands you, but what you've really found is someone studying your soul. The witch doesn't need a spellbook when she has your story. Once she knows your triggers, your wounds, and your insecurities, she can begin to craft emotional scenarios that drain your peace. She'll make you dependent on her validation. She'll subtly create chaos and then offer herself as your only calm. It's a clever cycle. She wounds and heals, breaks and fixes, rejects and reconciles, so that you become emotionally addicted to her presence. You begin to crave her approval, her words, her energy, because she has convinced you that only she understands you. That is not love, that is control disguised as compassion. Understand this truth: emotional access is spiritual access. That's why wise people guard their hearts, because they know their emotions are gates to their spirit. Once someone can pull your emotions at will, they can alter your choices, your focus, and even your faith. They can make you feel guilty for saying no, ashamed for setting boundaries, and confused about your own discernment. The witch doesn't need to fight you openly. She only needs to keep you emotionally unstable. Because as long as your emotions are in chaos, your spirit cannot hear clearly. The enemy doesn't have to silence your voice if he can simply make you question it. Watch carefully the people who always want to be involved in your feelings but never contribute to your growth. They always want to know what's wrong but never celebrate what's right. They feed on your pain because your peace starves their power. Every witch feeds off energy, and the most potent form of energy is emotion. The more you feel, the more they feed. That's why they provoke reactions, arguments, tears, guilt, or fear, because each outburst is an offering of energy, and when you calm down, you feel drained without understanding why. That's not coincidence, that's spiritual feeding. A witch's weapon is not confrontation, it's connection. She doesn't need to fight you when she can fuse with you. Once she becomes part of your emotional rhythm, you can no longer distinguish her energy from yours. Her moods affect your peace, her silence disturbs your focus, her words linger in your thoughts. You begin to shape your day around her reactions. That's when witchcraft has succeeded, not when you hate her, but when you need her. Dependency is the invisible chain, and emotional dependency is the strongest spell of all. That's why spiritual awareness requires emotional maturity. You must learn to separate empathy from attachment, compassion from compromise. You can love people deeply without letting them occupy your soul. You can help without being held. The moment you sense that someone's presence costs you your peace, that is not love, it's manipulation. Protect your emotions like you protect your passwords, because both guard your access. Once compromised, everything attached to them is vulnerable. The witch's influence thrives in silence. They will rarely admit their control, but you'll see it in the way you react. You'll notice how you start hiding your blessings because they get jealous. You'll sense how you hesitate to make decisions without their approval. You'll realize how you feel guilty when you distance yourself, as if you owe them your energy. That is not friendship, that is emotional slavery. Freedom begins when you detach your peace from other people's reactions. No one should have that kind of access to your emotions except the one who created them. And here's the hidden truth. Witches fear emotional independence. They lose power when you stop explaining yourself. They weaken when you no longer react. Silence is their exposure. Peace is their defeat. The moment you refuse to be emotionally manipulated, their influence collapses. That's why spiritual growth requires emotional boundaries. Love people, but don't let them live inside your spirit rent-free. Listen, but don't absorb. Care, but don't carry. Not every problem presented to you deserves your energy. Some are bait to reopen doors you already closed. If you truly desire peace, you must close emotional gates that lead to spiritual bondage. You cannot heal while entertaining what keeps you broken. Emotional access must be earned, not given. Those who constantly drain your energy are not your tribe. They're your test. Learn to identify them by their fruit. Do they bring calm or confusion? After talking with them, do you feel lighter or heavier? The answer will tell you everything. So guard your heart, because whoever holds your emotions holds your destiny. Stop giving emotional access to people who have no spiritual permission to be in your life. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. The enemy cannot curse what he cannot connect to. The witch cannot manipulate what she cannot move. Once you master your emotions, you become spiritually untouchable. And when you reach that level of awareness, every witch who once thrived on your weakness will find themselves powerless against your strength. They create cycles of misfortune around you. One of the clearest indicators that someone in your life carries a spirit of witchcraft is the sudden appearance of strange cycles, patterns of confusion, delay, and disappointment that seem to repeat without logical explanation. These are not random coincidences, they are the footprints of invisible warfare. When a witch attaches to your life, their energy begins to influence your atmosphere. They don't have to curse you directly, their presence alone is enough to shift the environment. Suddenly, what used to flow easily becomes heavy. Relationships that were once peaceful start to feel tense. Doors that opened naturally now resist you. You start losing focus, money, opportunities, and even the joy to dream. You may call it bad luck, but in reality, it's a spiritual drain, a cycle engineered through connection. Witchcraft operates through spiritual law, and one of its unspoken rules is this: where there is permission, there is power. When you give someone emotional, mental, or spiritual access, you also give them influence over your atmosphere. This is why certain people can walk into your home and suddenly the peace feels disturbed. It's not them physically, it's the energy they carry. They are spiritual transmitters carrying frequencies of fear, jealousy, and control. When they connect to your life, their spiritual residue attaches to your environment. You begin to carry their energy unknowingly, and the weight of it manifests as misfortune. Witches don't always curse with words, they curse with energy. Their thoughts, intentions, and emotions are projections that move invisibly. When they envy your peace, they release negativity toward it. When they resent your blessings, they send energy that blocks them. They may smile at you outwardly, but inwardly, their spirit is releasing resistance against your progress. And because energy is real, because thoughts are vibrations, your atmosphere begins to echo the energy they emit. You start to experience what I call spiritual climate change. The temperature of your environment shifts, and peace becomes rare. You'll recognize this when strange things begin to happen in patterns. For instance, you might notice every time you share your goals with this person, something suddenly goes wrong. You get excited about a new opportunity, and within days it collapses. You make plans and obstacles appear from nowhere. You rest at night but wake up heavy, anxious, or fearful. These are not coincidences, they are cycles of misfortune activated through connection. The witch doesn't have to perform a ritual, your openness is their ritual. They use proximity as power. A witch's goal is not always to destroy you immediately, it is to exhaust you gradually. They want you to live in a loop of frustration where nothing seems to move forward. Because once you lose hope, your spirit becomes vulnerable. Weariness weakens discernment. They understand that a tired soul is an easy target. That's why when a witch is in your life, everything feels like effort. You work harder but accomplish less. You pray more but feel less peace. You plan carefully but see little fruit. They drain your motivation until you begin to question your purpose. That's how witchcraft works. It breaks you by cycles, not catastrophes. Another sign of this spiritual pattern is confusion. When witchcraft is operating near you, your thoughts become clouded. You struggle to make clear decisions. You second guess what you used to know with certainty. Confusion is not natural, it's spiritual static. When your spirit is under witchcraft influence, it cannot transmit clearly. That's why discernment becomes dull, faith feels faint, and prayer feels dry. The enemy knows if he can disrupt your focus, he can delay your destiny. You'll waste time fighting the wrong battles, doubting the right people, and chasing distractions instead of your calling. Cycles of misfortune also affect your relationships. Witches carry divisive energy. They subtly create distance between you and those who truly love you. They plant suspicion, gossip, or misunderstanding that erodes trust. You'll find yourself suddenly arguing with people who never offended you or isolating yourself from the ones who uplift you. That isolation is strategic. Witchcraft thrives in secrecy. Once you are emotionally cut off from genuine support, the witch becomes your primary influence. That's how they maintain control. They weaken every other source of strength around you. And then there's the physical manifestation: fatigue, sickness, or unexplainable exhaustion. Witchcraft doesn't only target your emotions, it drains your vitality. You might wake up tired, experience sudden illnesses, or feel pressure in your body with no medical cause. It's because spiritual energy, when dark, translates into physical heaviness. You can't pray or plan effectively when your body is constantly burdened. That's how they weaken your warfare. They attack your wellness. But here's the truth: no witch can maintain power over a soul that awakens to discernment. Awareness breaks cycles. Once you identify the source of misfortune, you take back your authority. You begin to reverse the energy by setting spiritual boundaries. Stop sharing your dreams with those who secretly despise them. Stop explaining your peace to those who profit from your pain. The moment you distance yourself from those who carry dark energy, your life begins to realign. The fog lifts, opportunities return, and peace flows again. You must also cleanse your atmosphere daily. Speak words of light, gratitude, and truth into your environment. Words are frequencies too. They can reset your spiritual climate. Every morning, declare that no dark energy can occupy your space. Reclaim your atmosphere with intention. Burn incense if you must, but remember, it's not the smoke that protects you, it's your spirit. Keep your heart clean, your motives pure, and your faith strong. Darkness cannot dwell where light continually shines. Cycles of misfortune are never random. They are spiritual patterns revealing hidden attachments. The moment you notice repeating delays, constant heaviness, or recurring loss, don't just fix the symptom. Examine the connection. Ask yourself, who entered my life right before this started? Who drains me instead of driving me? The answer will often lead you to the source. Remember, no witch can curse what is spiritually closed off. They can only thrive where there is access. That's why the greatest protection is separation. Detach from every atmosphere that feels wrong, even if it looks right. Protect your spirit like you protect your future, because they are the same, and once you reclaim your peace, every cycle of misfortune will break under the weight of your awareness. Because in the end, darkness cannot rule where light decides to live. They speak words that bind. Every word released into your life carries spiritual weight. Words are not just sounds. They are frequencies, vibrations that travel into the unseen world and shape reality. That's why ancient wisdom teaches that life and death are in the power of the tongue. The witch understands this law better than most believers. She knows that what she cannot control through actions, she can influence through words. Witchcraft uses speech as a weapon, soft, subtle, and strategic. It's not always a curse spoken in anger. Sometimes it's a compliment that carries manipulation, a conversation that sows doubt, or advice that redirects destiny. The witch knows how to use words to wrap around your soul, binding your emotions and confusing your mind until you can no longer distinguish encouragement from enchantment. Words are spiritual codes. When someone speaks into your life, they are sowing seeds into the soil of your spirit. A witch's words are not random, they are targeted. She listens long enough to know what you need to hear and then uses that knowledge to craft her influence. She speaks to your weakness, not your strength. She frames her language around your insecurities so that her voice becomes your emotional compass. Slowly, you start depending on her words for comfort, validation, and clarity. And once her words begin to live in your thoughts, she doesn't need to control you externally. You carry her voice internally. That is how spiritual bondage begins, when another person's words replace your own discernment. Be careful of people who constantly speak limitation over your life, even if they disguise it as concern. They say things like, "I just don't want you to get hurt," or "maybe you're expecting too much," or "I think you should settle for this. It's safer." These are not words of love. They are words of fear, and fear is the language of witchcraft. When spoken often enough, those words begin to take root in your spirit. You start shrinking your dreams, lowering your expectations, and dimming your light to fit into their comfort zone. What you call being realistic may actually be the result of a curse spoken through care. That's how witchcraft hides. It uses gentle tones to deliver deadly truths. The witch also uses gossip and negativity as tools of influence. She speaks against others to control your perception, planting division through whispers. Her goal is not just to poison how you see people, it's to isolate you so her voice becomes the only one you trust. Every rumor she spreads is a net. Every secret she shares is a trap. She binds relationships not with ropes, but with rumors. That's why you must never underestimate the power of words spoken in your environment. A witch doesn't have to shout to curse you. She only has to speak doubt in your absence. Words travel, words linger, words can bless, but they can also bind. Have you ever noticed how after certain conversations your mood changes, your peace feels disturbed, or your confidence fades? That's not just emotion, it's energy. When a witch speaks, her words carry the intention of her heart. If her heart is envious, her words release heaviness. If her heart is deceitful, her words release confusion. The tone may sound sweet, but the vibration is sour. That's why spiritual discernment isn't just about what you hear. It's about what you feel after you hear it. Some people say all the right things but carry all the wrong energy. Listen not only to their words, but to their aftertaste. The witch's ultimate goal is to make her words more powerful in your life than truth. She wants to become the interpreter of your experiences. When something good happens, she minimizes it. When something difficult happens, she amplifies it. She shapes your perception so that even blessings begin to look like burdens. Her words distort your reality until you begin to agree with her perspective instead of your purpose. This is why many people under witchcraft influence stop trusting their instincts. They've been spoken into confusion. But the truth is, no one can control you without your agreement. Words only have power when you receive them. The moment you stop accepting negative declarations, their energy loses authority. You must become intentional about what you allow to live in your spirit. When someone says something over you that doesn't align with peace, success, or faith, reject it immediately. Don't argue, just cancel it silently in your heart. Every unchallenged word becomes a seed, and every seed grows. That's why awareness is warfare. You don't fight witches with hatred. You fight them with truth. Be equally careful of your own speech. When witchcraft influences your atmosphere, it can tempt you to start speaking death over yourself without realizing it. You begin saying things like, "Nothing ever works out for me," "I'm always unlucky," or "maybe I'm not good enough." Every negative confession reinforces the chains the witch has placed around you. Remember, you are either cursing or creating with your tongue. The moment you speak from pain instead of purpose, you start building the very cage you're trying to escape. The enemy knows this, and that's why he uses people to plant words that keep you repeating cycles with your own mouth. To break free, you must reclaim your voice. Begin speaking opposite of what the witch declares. If she says you'll fail, declare you'll flourish. If she sows fear, speak faith. If she spreads gossip, release grace. Your words are weapons. Every affirmation, every prayer, every declaration of truth cuts through the webs of witchcraft. Light travels faster than darkness, and truth speaks louder than lies when spoken consistently. You silence their power by speaking life louder than they speak death. And here's the ultimate truth: witches fear word warriors. They can manipulate silence, but not speech rooted in authority. That's why you must never stay quiet when darkness speaks. Use your words to cleanse your space, your home, your mind. Speak gratitude over your morning, peace over your relationships, and protection over your path. Every time you speak truth, you rewire the atmosphere. Every time you affirm light, you burn the cords of witchcraft. In the end, words are portals. They open doors to light or darkness, peace or chaos. Whoever's words you allow to shape your reality becomes your unseen master. That's why discernment begins with listening. Don't just hear what people say. Watch what happens after they speak. If their words leave you heavy, bound, or confused, know this: they are not carriers of light. Protect your ears, guard your heart, and fill your environment with words that liberate, not limit. Because when witches speak words that bind, only those anchored in truth can speak words that break. They fear your spiritual authority. The final and most revealing sign that someone in your life carries the spirit of witchcraft is their reaction to your spiritual authority. Witches are not afraid of your personality, your education, or even your material success. They fear your spiritual strength, because authority is not about how loud you speak. It's about what speaks through you. True spiritual authority carries weight. It exposes darkness without effort. It unsettles everything hidden. And those who operate in witchcraft cannot remain comfortable in the presence of such light. When you carry divine power, those walking in manipulation begin to retreat, avoid, or attack, because your authority reminds their spirit of what they've lost: alignment with truth. A witch's influence thrives in environments of weakness. They need emotional chaos, spiritual laziness, and confusion to survive. But once you awaken to your authority, once you begin to speak with power, walk in confidence, and pray with conviction, their spell breaks. Authority is the antidote to witchcraft. It is light that exposes shadow, truth that disarms deception. That is why witches cannot stand being around people who discern. They will either distance themselves or turn against you. The same people who once flattered you will suddenly find fault with you. They'll begin to say you've changed, not because you've become arrogant, but because you've become aware. Your awakening exposes their agenda. You'll notice that when you start growing spiritually, certain people become uncomfortable. They used to enjoy your company, but now your presence irritates them. They no longer laugh at your jokes or share their secrets. They withdraw. That's not rejection, it's revelation. Light doesn't need to argue with darkness. It simply reveals what's been hiding. When your spirit becomes strong, those who depended on your weakness lose their influence. They will either have to repent or retreat because your authority dismantles their control. Witches fear prayer, not the kind of prayer filled with fancy words, but prayer spoken from conviction. When you pray with authority, you shift the atmosphere. You cut through the spiritual cords that tie you to manipulation. They know that every time you pray with understanding, their power diminishes. That's why people under witchcraft influence often discourage prayer or mock spirituality. They'll say things like, "You're too religious," or "You take things too seriously." What they're really saying is, "You're becoming too strong for me to control." Every step you take toward truth weakens their grip. The witch also fears discernment. They thrive in secrecy and subtlety. As long as you remain emotionally distracted or spiritually dull, they can manipulate freely. But the moment you begin to discern, the moment you start seeing patterns, recognizing energy shifts, and confronting false peace, they panic. They might accuse you of being judgmental or paranoid, but that's just defense. Discernment is their exposure. When your inner eyes open, their illusion collapses. You see beyond their charm and recognize their true nature. That's when the warfare begins, not because you're attacking them, but because your awareness has dethroned them. Spiritual authority doesn't just confront witches, it commands respect from all spiritual realms. When you carry divine authority, everything around you begins to align with truth. You stop begging for peace and start declaring it. You stop chasing acceptance and start walking in confidence. You no longer live reactively. You move with intentionality. This kind of authority is terrifying to the spirit of witchcraft because it cannot coexist with confidence rooted in light. Witchcraft feeds on fear, but authority feeds on faith. When faith rises, witchcraft dies. You'll also notice how witchcraft reacts to your declarations. When you start speaking words of power, affirming your purpose, blessing your path, protecting your peace, the atmosphere begins to shift. Those who once drained you will start avoiding you. It's not personal, it's spiritual. Your words carry vibration, and your vibration no longer matches theirs. Authority changes your frequency. You stop resonating with manipulation. That's why you must never lower your vibration to accommodate people who can't handle your growth. The ones who truly love you will adjust. The ones who were using you will exit. A witch's deepest fear is being powerless, and your authority reminds them of exactly that. When you walk in truth, you become untouchable, not because attacks won't come, but because they won't stick. Authority doesn't prevent storms, it gives you the power to speak peace into them. Authority doesn't erase enemies, it exposes them. That's why when witches encounter someone who knows who they are, they start trembling internally. They realize they can no longer manipulate you with flattery, control you with guilt, or weaken you with confusion. Your awareness becomes your weapon. Your peace becomes your shield. Understand this. Every human carries potential authority, but only those who align their spirit with truth activate it. Authority is not borrowed, it's built. It grows through consistency, through prayer, through clarity, and through refusing to compromise. The more light you carry, the more shadows you expose. This is why the moment you start walking in purpose, opposition arises. The witch senses danger, not because you're attacking them, but because your very existence now threatens their influence. You are the light they cannot manipulate. You are the voice that dismantles their whispers. If you want to break free from every form of witchcraft, you must stop approaching life as a victim and start living as one with authority. You are not powerless. You are not fragile. You are a spiritual being clothed in divine strength. When you speak truth, darkness listens. When you set boundaries, manipulation breaks. When you declare peace, chaos obeys. Authority is not arrogance. It's awareness of divine alignment. It's knowing who you are and refusing to surrender that identity to fear or deception. The witch fears those who know their worth, because worth is strength. When you finally understand your value, you stop accepting counterfeit love, fake friendships, and false peace. You stop entertaining energy that dishonors your soul. And when that happens, every witch who once found shelter in your insecurity will flee, because confidence evicts darkness. So if certain people begin to fade from your life as you grow spiritually, don't chase them. Their exit is your confirmation. They are not leaving because they hate you. They're leaving because they can no longer handle your authority. Light doesn't negotiate with darkness. It simply shines. Let your authority shine so bright that no witch, no manipulation, no hidden energy can stand in your presence. Because the moment you awaken to your divine power, witchcraft loses its last weapon, fear. Walk boldly in truth, speak firmly in faith, and protect your peace as a sacred inheritance. Remember this, your authority is your armor. Those who walk in light never need to fear darkness, because wherever true authority stands, witchcraft has no choice but to bow.